A small boy runs barefoot through the cracked concrete of a Polish housing estate. His name is never announced. His face is never celebrated. He is simply the kid with the torn jacket and the empty stomach, the one everybody in the neighborhood already knows will amount to nothing. That boy is the gangster. And this is where it begins. Poland, the 1980s. The communist bloc is rotting from the inside. Shops are empty. Fathers drink until they forget their own names. And the children of the working poor learn one lesson faster than any school can teach. The world is divided into those who take and those who get taken from. The gangster grows up in that second group. His family is broke, not poor but comfortable broke, genuinely nothing. His clothes are too small. His shoes have holes. And every single morning, he walks into a school where that poverty is written all over him like a brand. The other kids see it immediately. There is a group of boys, older, bigger, better fed, who have appointed themselves the architects of his humiliation. They surround him in the schoolyard. They knock his bag off his shoulder. They laugh at his jacket. They take his lunch. And when he tries to fight back, they beat him down in front of everyone until the dirt on his face mixes with the blood from his lip. He gets up. He always gets up. But something behind his eyes changes every single time. Here is the thing that the bullies never understood. And this is the first lesson this story teaches us about power. Humiliation, when it is sustained long enough, does not break a person. It builds them. It forges something cold and patient and terrifying in the place where warmth used to live. Every punch they threw at that boy was an investment. They just didn't know what they were funding. At home, things are no better. His father is absent in every way that matters. His mother does what she can, but what she can do is not enough. There is no safety at home. There is no safety at school. The boy exists in a world with no corners to hide in, so he starts watching instead. He watches the older men on the estate, the ones with the leather jackets and the cars, the ones nobody disrespects, the ones who walk through those same broken streets and make everyone else move out of the way. These men have something the boy cannot name yet, but he feels it like heat. They have power. And in his world, power is the only currency that actually means anything. One man in particular catches his eye. A local criminal, not famous, not rich in any Hollywood sense, but untouchable in the way that matters most on a Polish estate in the 1980s. Nobody takes his lunch. Nobody knocks his bag off his shoulder. Nobody laughs at his jacket. The boy decides, without announcing it to anyone, that this is what he will become. He starts doing small things for the older boys on the estate, running errands, delivering packages he knows better than to open. He is quick. He is quiet. He does not ask questions. And he does not steal a single zloty for himself, because he understands something that most adults in his position never figure out. Loyalty is the first currency you need to earn before you can earn anything else. The criminal ecosystem of 1980s, Poland runs on exactly that: loyalty and fear, two forces that look like opposites but work together like a lock and a key. The local criminal notices the boy. How could he not? In a world full of people trying to take more than they give, here is a child who gives without asking. The man begins to speak to him. Not warmly. Warmth is a luxury these men abandoned years ago, but with a kind of respect that nobody has ever pointed in the boy's direction before. And that respect? It hits him harder than any punch those schoolyard boys ever threw. By the time he is a teenager, the transformation is already underway. His posture has changed. The boys who used to beat him in the schoolyard don't look at him the same way anymore. Not because he has grown taller, though he has. Not because he has gotten stronger, though he has. But because of something in his expression. Something that says, I have already decided what I am willing to do, and you don't want to find out. The streets are teaching him things no classroom ever could. He learns that reputation is built brick by brick, through 1,000 tiny moments where you either hold your line or you don't. He learns that the men who last in this world are not the most violent, they are the most consistent. Violence without control is just noise, but violence deployed with precision and patience, that is language. That is authority. He is becoming fluent in that language. And somewhere far away, in some comfortable home, the boys who used to steal his lunch are doing their homework and thinking about their futures. They have no idea what they just created. Before we go any further, where are you watching this from right now? And what time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments. I want to see how far this story is traveling. Poland changes. The wall comes down. Communism collapses overnight like a building with termites in the foundation. And in that moment of political chaos and economic freefall, something extraordinary happens for the men who already know how to operate in the dark. The entire country becomes their playground. The 1990s arrive like a thunderclap. The state that once controlled everything is now controlling nothing. Privatization floods the market. New money appears from nowhere. Old institutions dissolve. And in that vacuum, that wild, lawless, intoxicating vacuum, organized crime in Poland does not just grow, it explodes. The gangster is exactly the right age to ride that wave. He is now a young man, and he has already served his apprenticeship. The errands, the packages, the silences kept at exactly the right moments, all of it has built a track record. He is trusted. He is useful. He is not someone the people above him need to worry about. That last part is the most important. In criminal organizations, the men who rise fastest are not the most talented. They are the ones who make the men above them feel safe. The gangster has mastered this completely. He is ambitious, but he wears his ambition like a hidden knife, close to the body, invisible until the exact moment it needs to be seen. He begins to move up, not dramatically, not with declarations or confrontations. He simply fills whatever space is available and then expands it quietly until the space belongs to him. A debt collected here, a problem solved there, a meeting attended where no one expected him to speak, and then he speaks, and what he says is so precise, so measured, so exactly right that the men around the table exchange a glance without meaning to. This is when others start to take notice. There is a crew, a specific group of men operating across Warsaw and beyond, moving in the new criminal economy that the fall of communism has unlocked. Extortion, protection rackets, smuggling. The new private businesses that are flooding Poland need protection, or at least they need to believe they need protection. These are men who have found a perfect business model. Sell fear to people who don't know yet they're buying it. The gangster joins this crew not as a soldier, he joins as a thinker. Because here is what the other men in these organizations often lack: strategy. They are reactive. They respond to problems with fists and guns when the situation demands it. But the gangster starts asking questions they have never thought to ask. What happens after? What does this cost us in the long run? Who are we making enemies of? And do we need those enemies right now? He is applying logic to chaos. And in a chaotic environment, logic is the most dangerous weapon of all. He develops relationships, not friendships. He is too careful for friendships, but alliances, carefully constructed, mutually beneficial arrangements where every party understands exactly what they are getting and what they owe. He learns to read people the way other men read maps, looking for shortcuts, for dead ends, for places where the territory belongs to someone else, and you cross it at your own risk. The violence, when it comes, does not come randomly. This is something the film captures with unusual honesty, and something worth understanding. In organized crime at this level, random violence is actually a sign of weakness. It means you have lost control of the situation. Controlled violence, targeted, purposeful, delivered as a message rather than as an explosion, is what maintains order. The gangster never throws a punch out of anger. Every act of force he authorizes or participates in is a sentence in a very specific language. He is speaking to a very specific audience. He is becoming fluent. He is becoming dangerous. He is becoming known. By the mid-1990s, his name carries weight. Not everywhere, not yet. But in the circles that matter to him, the circles he has been patiently climbing through, the sound of his name in a room changes the temperature slightly. People become a little more careful, a little more precise, a little more aware that something is at stake. The boy who had his lunch stolen is becoming someone nobody steals from. But power at this level comes with a specific kind of gravity. It pulls things toward you: money, influence, people who want to attach themselves to what you are building. And it also pulls in things you did not ask for: enemies, rivals, men who see what you have built and decide it should belong to them instead. One of these men enters the story now, a rival, established, older, connected to structures the gangster is still working to penetrate. This man does not see a future partner when he looks at the gangster. He sees a problem that has not yet become urgent. A weed in a garden he considers his own. He begins to apply pressure. Subtle at first. A deal blocked here. A contact suddenly unavailable. A message delivered through intermediaries that carries a very clear subtext. Know your place. The gangster receives each of these messages the same way, quietly, without visible reaction. But behind those same eyes that watch the schoolyard bullies with terrible patience, something is calculating, measuring, waiting for exactly the right moment to respond in a way that cannot be ignored, cannot be misunderstood, and cannot be reversed. He is not angry. He is almost never angry. That is the most frightening thing about him. Here is something nobody tells you about power. The closer you get to the top, the more exposed you become. At the bottom, nobody notices you. At the middle, some people notice you. At the top, everybody is watching. Every decision is scrutinized. Every relationship is a potential liability. Every alliance that brought you here is now a chain that limits where you can go next. The gangster is learning this the hard way. He has moved far enough up the structure that the men above him are now genuinely uncomfortable. This was not supposed to happen. He was supposed to be useful but controllable. He was supposed to know his ceiling and press against it politely, never actually breaking through. But the gangster has never respected ceilings that other people built. The rival makes his move. It is not a direct confrontation. Men at this level rarely work that way. It is an operation designed to cut the gangster off at the knees without ever looking like an attack. Key associates are approached and offered better arrangements elsewhere. A crucial business arrangement is undermined from the inside. And then the real blow, a piece of information is placed in exactly the wrong hands. Information that is not quite true, but not quite false enough to dismiss immediately. Information designed to make the men who trust the gangster start wondering whether that trust has been misplaced. Doubt. This is the weapon being deployed, and it is extraordinarily effective. Because here is the truth about criminal organizations that this film understands deeply, and this is genuinely worth knowing. These structures run on trust even more than legitimate businesses do. In a legitimate company, contracts and courts protect you if someone breaks faith. In organized crime, there is no court, there is no contract, there is only reputation. And the moment your reputation develops a crack, every enemy you have ever made can insert a blade into that crack and start working it wider. The gangster feels the ground shifting beneath him. He responds, and this is where we see exactly how far he has come from that boy in the schoolyard. He does not panic. He does not lash out. He calls in every favor, every debt, every relationship he has built over 15 years with the same patience that a spider builds a web. He pulls the threads one by one, quietly reconstructing the image of himself that the rival is trying to tear down. He meets privately with the men whose doubts have been seeded. Not to defend himself loudly, loud defense sounds like guilt, but to remind them of specific moments, specific decisions, specific times when he was right and his judgment protected them. He lets the evidence speak in a calm voice while everything around him is trying to scream. And then he turns to the rival directly. Not with confrontation, not with threats delivered through intermediaries. He requests a meeting, face to face, in a location of the rival's choosing, because choosing the location feels like control, and the gangster wants his enemy to feel as comfortable as possible before the conversation begins. They sit across from each other. Two men, two entirely different philosophies about how power should be held. The rival expects intimidation, or perhaps an offer of surrender dressed up as a partnership. What he gets instead is something he cannot immediately categorize. The gangster speaks quietly about the future, about what the next 10 years look like for the criminal ecosystem in Poland, about where the money is moving, where the risks are concentrating, and who is going to survive the transition. And in doing so, he demonstrates something devastating. He knows more than the rival does. He has thought further ahead. He has already mapped the territory the rival doesn't even know exists yet. The meeting ends without a resolution. But something has shifted. The rival leaves the table with a feeling he cannot fully articulate something between respect and fear. And those two things, combined, are the foundation of the gangster's particular kind of power. But the pressure does not stop. Physical danger enters the picture now. Not the casual violence of street life, something more deliberate. An incident that makes clear the rival has decided that elegant solutions have failed, and less elegant ones must be considered. Someone close to the gangster is hurt. A message, but also a test. Will this break his composure? Will this make him reactive? Will this drag him into exactly the kind of messy, emotional, public confrontation that destroys reputations? He buries the emotion. He does not allow himself to feel it fully until he is completely alone, in private, where no one can use what they see on his face against him. And then he begins to build his response. Not a retaliation. Retaliation is for men who think in straight lines. A repositioning. A series of moves, each individually explainable, collectively impossible to ignore, that leave the rival standing in a landscape that has been subtly rearranged around him. Contacts the rival needs are suddenly less available. Arrangements that protect the rival's interests develop small complications. The invisible infrastructure that every criminal enterprise depends on quietly begins to redirect its loyalty. The rival does not see it happening, not at first, because each individual piece looks like coincidence or bad luck. By the time he realizes it is a strategy, the gangster is already 3 moves past the position the rival is trying to respond to. This is the moment, this exact moment, where the story shifts from being about survival to being about something darker, about what it costs to win at this level. Because winning requires the gangster to become something he maybe did not intend to become. The precision, the coldness, the ability to look at people as pieces on a board rather than as human beings with their own fear and their own hunger. He is very good at this, disturbingly good. And somewhere, at the back of his eyes, in a place he visits less and less often, the 10-year-old boy with the torn jacket and the stolen lunch is watching what he has become. Here's what genuinely gets me. 99% of people watching this right now will finish the story and move on without subscribing. You just spent real time here. You felt this. Subscribing costs you absolutely nothing, but it means you never miss a story like this one. This channel exists to give voices to the lives history tries to bury. Be one of the rare ones who stays. The gangster wins. Let us say that clearly, because the film does not let us pretend otherwise. He defeats the rival. He consolidates his position. He becomes, through a combination of intelligence, patience, brutality deployed with surgical precision, and an almost inhuman ability to manage perception, one of the most significant criminal figures in his world. This is the part of the story that nobody wants to sit with, because we have been with him since he was 10 years old, with a bloody lip and a stolen lunch. We have watched him build something from nothing. We have been quietly rooting for him, the way you root for the underdog even when part of your brain is screaming that you shouldn't. And now he has won, and winning looks like this. Expensive suits that hang perfectly. A car that announces itself before it arrives. Men who watch every room he enters and leave first to check the room he is about to enter. Money that does not need to announce itself because everyone already knows it is there. A reputation so thoroughly constructed that his name alone closes mouths and opens doors. He has built, from nothing, an empire. But empires require constant maintenance, and the maintenance of a criminal empire is not glamorous. It is exhausting. It requires the gangster to make decisions every single day that no rule of law, no ethical framework, no structure of accountability will ever review. He is judge and jury and executor in a world where the cases never stop coming. A member of his organization steals. What is the appropriate response? Too soft, and everyone learns they can steal. Too hard, and everyone learns that this organization eats its own. The calibration must be exact, and the gangster must perform it without a manual, without precedent, without anyone he can genuinely ask for advice. A business associate from the legitimate world, a politician, a businessman, someone who has enjoyed the benefits of the gangster's protection without ever wanting to acknowledge what that protection actually involves, begins making noise about distance, about clean hands, about wanting to step back from an arrangement that has become inconvenient now that their own profile has risen. How do you hold someone who does not want to be held? Without violence, because violence against a public figure is catastrophic. Without exposure, because exposure damages both parties. The gangster must find the exact point between those two things and press on it with precisely enough force to change the decision without leaving a bruise. He is exceptional at this. But it costs him. Every single time, it costs him something he cannot quite name and cannot quite replace. There are people in his life who love him, or who try to. The film gives us glimpses of this moments where the armor drops slightly, where the man who exists underneath all of this machinery of power surfaces briefly, blinking in the light like something that has been underground too long, a relationship that might have been something in a different life, a moment of warmth that he almost allows himself to have. Almost. Because the problem with having constructed this particular version of yourself is that you cannot be two things simultaneously. The gangster understands viscerally, completely, in every bone, that the moment he allows softness to become visible, it becomes a target. Everyone who has ever wanted to bring him down will reach for exactly that vulnerability. He has watched it happen to other men, strong men, men he respected, so he closes the door on the warmth before it can be used against him, and every time he does it, the door feels slightly heavier, slightly more permanent. New threats emerge, because they always do. The criminal ecosystem is not static. New players arrive with new money and new connections and a complete absence of respect for the structures the gangster has spent decades building. Younger men who did not live through what he lived through, who did not earn what he earned, who look at what he built and see not something to respect, but something to take. They are bold, reckless in the way that only people who do not yet understand consequences can be reckless. And their boldness is actually more dangerous than the rival's elegance was, because you cannot outmaneuver chaos with strategy. Chaos must be met with something that even chaos recognizes. Force. Clear, unambiguous, memorable. The gangster delivers it, and in delivering it, he crosses a line that he has been walking alongside for years. Something about this crossing is different. Something about the scale of it, the finality of it, creates a new chapter in his reputation but also a new weight on his shoulders. He is no longer the boy who survived. He is no longer the young man who outsmarted everyone around him. He is now something that the Polish criminal world has a very specific word for, a word that is spoken quietly and always preceded by a small, involuntary pause. He is the most feared man in his world. And somewhere in the private hours, in the 3 in the morning, when the suits are off and the men are gone, and there is no audience for the performance, he sits with that. He turns it over. He examines what it cost him and whether the thing he purchased with that price was actually what he wanted. The film does not answer this question for him. That is one of its greatest strengths. It forces the audience to sit in that silence with him, to ask themselves what they would have done differently, and whether different decisions, at any point, would have led anywhere other than here. Because here is the uncomfortable truth that this story tells with extraordinary honesty. The world that made the gangster did not give him a clean alternative. The poverty was real. The bullying was real. The absence of any legitimate path to safety and dignity was real. He made choices, yes, but those choices were made inside a structure that he did not design and was not consulted about. Understanding this is not the same as forgiving everything, but it is the beginning of understanding anything at all. Everything that rises must deal with the thing that rises with it. Consequence. This is the final act, the one that was always coming, the one the gangster has known in some cold, clear, rational part of himself was inevitable from the moment he made his first real choice. You do not build what he built without one day sitting across a table from everything you did and having to account for it. The accounting comes from multiple directions simultaneously, because that is how it always works at this level, not a single blow, but a convergence. A perfect storm that turns every strength into a liability at the same moment. Law enforcement. They have been watching for years, longer than the gangster knows, longer than his network of protection and information can see. And they have been patient in the same way he is patient, building, accumulating, waiting for exactly the right moment when the case is airtight and the timing is political and the arrest will mean something beyond simply removing one man from the board. They move now. The knock on the door, when it comes, is not dramatic in the Hollywood sense. No screaming, no flashing lights. Just a specific kind of knock, measured, authoritative, the knock of people who have been planning this moment for a very long time and are not in any hurry because they already know how it ends. The gangster opens the door, and in that moment, this single crystalline moment, every mask that he has spent decades perfecting is still in place. The face is calm, the posture is controlled. He looks at the men standing at his door the way he has looked at every threat his entire life, with an absolute absence of visible fear. But inside? Inside is the 10-year-old boy. Just for a moment, just long enough. The arrest triggers a collapse that is not just personal, but structural. Because the gangster was the keystone of an arch, everything else was arranged around his presence, his judgment, his ability to hold competing interests in careful balance. Remove the keystone, and the arch does not gradually weaken, it falls all at once. The organization fractures. Alliances that seemed permanent reveal themselves to be contingent on a single variable: him. Partners who benefited from proximity to his power now demonstrate with impressive speed how thoroughly they can distance themselves from everything he represented. The men who were most loyal are left most exposed. The men who were most self-serving vanish with a facility that would be impressive if it were not so devastating. The legitimate world, the politicians, the businessmen, the people who attended the same events and took the same money and pretended not to know what it was, those people do not wait to be asked. They bury their involvement with the same tools they always bury inconvenient things: money, lawyers, silence, and the very specific ability that powerful people have to make the past say something different from what actually happened. The gangster watches this from a different vantage point now. The machinery of law and its procedures, the small, airless rooms, the meticulous documentation of a life that he lived at full speed, now being examined in slow motion by people who were not there for any of it. He does not break. That was never going to happen. But something in him shifts in a way that is not weakness, it is something closer to clarity. Because here is what the confined space and the enforced stillness give him that 40 years of constant motion never did. Time to look directly at everything he did, without the luxury of forward momentum to keep him from having to see it. He sees the lives he ended, not abstractly, specifically, the specific people, the specific moments. He has kept these things behind a door for decades because the alternative, actually looking at them, would have been incompatible with continuing to do what he needed to do. But the door is open now. There is nowhere else to be. He also sees, and this is perhaps the most complicated part of what the film gives us, the boy on the estate who had nothing, who was beaten and humiliated and dismissed, who looked at the world and found that the only path that offered him anything real was the one that led here. He does not use this as an excuse. He is too honest for that. But he holds it alongside everything else. He lets both things be true at the same time. The trial, the verdict, the sentence. These unfold with the matter-of-fact inevitability of things that were always going to happen. The legal process is not interested in the complexity of how one man became what he became. It is interested in what was done and what the law says about what was done. This is appropriate. This is how it should work. But we, the audience, have been given something the trial does not have: context, history, the 40-year journey from a broken schoolyard to a courtroom, and that context does not erase anything. It does not lighten the weight of the accounting, but it means we cannot watch the verdict without also thinking about the verdict that the world already delivered on a 10-year-old boy with a torn jacket and empty pockets. The film ends as the best films about this subject end, not with a tidy conclusion, but with a question. What do we owe the people we produce? Because the poverty that made the gangster was not an accident. The absence of protection and dignity and legitimate opportunity was not a natural disaster. It was a structure, a set of choices made by people with power, choices that created the conditions in which a boy like that could only go one way. And now, decades later, we sit in comfortable rooms and watch the consequences of those conditions on a screen and feel something complicated: sympathy mixed with condemnation, fascination mixed with discomfort, recognition, maybe, of the version of ourselves that would have made similar choices if the ground beneath us had been that unstable and the door out of the darkness had been that narrow. The gangster disappears into the system. The empire he built is dismantled. The streets he controlled continue their ordinary life. New men fill the spaces he vacated. The story of organized crime in Poland does not pause for his absence. But somewhere in the records, in the testimonies, in the film being watched right now, the boy with the torn jacket is still running through those cracked concrete streets, and nobody has quite figured out what we owed him then, or what we owe the ones like him now. Most people finish this and felt something they're about to scroll past. That feeling, that's exactly what this channel runs on. Subscribing is one tap, zero cost. But it means you become part of the small group that actually stays for the stories that leave a mark. These stories deserve more than one view. So do you.